Hey, hey, I'm back with another video in this series. Um, Oracle readings for Earth honoring economies. I just posted a video yesterday and I was just re-watching it. And then I had some more thoughts about this conversation that we've been having. And so I wanted to pop on and share those thoughts. So in the first video in this series is the quantum birth chart reading for the 1111 portal, and then the one I did yesterday was called the clash between your past self and your future self. And this one is called what happens after you get off the exit. So I was rewatching the video that I did yesterday, and we were talking about the fact that if your past self is in charge of your navigation as we move into 2026, as we navigate this entire, um, chapter of life that we're in right now. There, I gave the sort of metaphor of your past self will keep looping around in circles, and they'll keep driving by the exit. So if you're on a highway and you need to get off an exit in order to get to where you're going, to where you're longing for, And so this is, whatever you're longing for. If it's a place where it's easy to get paid for being who you are, if it's relationships that you're longing for, if it's, the next stage of your creative ambitions, if it's the place where, your creative ambitions get funding, right? If it's, anyway, your desires for being in community, whatever it is, if there's an exit that you have to take in order to get to that place. However, if your past self is your primary navigator, your past self will keep you looping around in circles, because what your past self knows how to do is survive very well in the circumstances that you're in, where you don't get all those other needs met, but you get to be comfortable enough fish, maybe, to a point, right? Um, and so we talked about how it's important to have your future self in your navigator seat, which is the passenger seat, right? You're still the driver, and that is really honoring the fact that um, the present is the present, right? Like, that's the gift, that's the prize, who we are right now, here and now. Um, just hearing that song by Rent, right? There's only us, no day but today, right? And so that we're living for today. We always have to. We don't get a promise. We're not guaranteed a tomorrow. Nobody is. But, we live as though there's this quote from, the book that my cats Esta and Rahel were named after. The greatest stories, you read them again and again, even when you know the ending. You read them as if you don't know the ending, right? You live as though you know one day you're going to die, but you live as though you won't. That's a quote from that book. And that's kind of what I'm talking about here. It's like we live as though we get that promise, even though, we don't have any guarantees. But without getting too kind of in that philosophical, or it's more than philosophical realm, but that like real heart-centered realm, we don't get a guarantee for tomorrow. But live as though we do, and that's how we create it. And I guess I'm talking about liberation as well, right? We don't get a guarantee for what's going to happen on our planet during our lifetime, but live as though we get free. And that's what I mean when I say have that version of you in your passenger seat, have that version of you as your navigator. Um, because yeah, if your past is in that navigator seat, it will keep you looping around in circles and you will keep missing that exit. And so in the last video, I talked about how important it is to have the right person in your passenger seat, energetically, the right version of you in that seat, the right team in the right place. You know, if you're your own five-man band, you know what I mean? Like you all need instruments in the right place. You need the right setup. Um, but the question that inspired me to get on here was like, what about for the person who's watching this who's like, I already took the exit, Shanga. I got it. I got off the exit. And yeah, I wanted to speak to that because we all might be in different places as we're navigating the road that we're on, as we're navigating the journey back to mass collective earth stewardship. And I see, if I see that a lot of us are on this road, right, getting there in terms of our 3D time, you know, like Gregorian calendar style. Like some of us might get off that highway at different times than others, some of us before and some of us a little after. But sort of what I see as this larger picture is, yeah, that's kind of the larger design, right? That's where we're going. If the exit is mass collective earth stewardship, in our lifetime or for the planet's body, regardless of how long we do or don't live in our bodies. That is what that exit is about. That is what this dance is about, right? And so everyone is like, has their moment in divine time, right? That you just make a move and that you enter into a new chapter, a new phase of your life. So everyone's kind of on this. It's not quite dominoes. It's more like if dominoes were this beautiful, kind of art piece, right? With all these different pieces in different places, and they're all unfolding, almost like a flower that's unfolding. Um, and if you even think of it as a flower, then our exit, each of our exits are sort of on different places, different directions of the altar. So some of us are getting off in the northwest corner, some of us in the southeast. But then when we end up there, we end up creating this incredible global altar, right? And that global altar is our lives. It's the artistry of our lives unfolding, and it's all sort of weaving together. And so that's what's happening on the ancestral level. That's how our ancestors are guiding us, right? And so to listen deeply, that's why, I say hello, good listeners, right? Because that's really the core of, how I want to build community with other people. And so when I say hello to you, that's what I'm doing. I'm wanting to be in community with others who are just listening, right? Listening to that ancestor voice deeply, listening to the heartbeat of the earth deeply. And that's what's guiding us into this unfolding, right? Um, but I wanted to create this video because if you are, already had taken that exit, the advice still stands, right? And it's still a key. It's still a key part of the puzzle to really pay attention to what's going on between the future self and the past self as you are navigating this new world, right? And for me personally, I think that if we're getting into like a quantum sort of, reality of it all, like I have already taken that exit and I am also in process of figuring out how to take that exit. So in the quantum reality of it, I've already gone and there's a part of me that's still looping around. Um, and that actually kind of brings me to talk a little bit about the my teachings around the process of ancestralization and what happens when your loved ones transition and how their process of learning how to become an ancestor or becoming the ancestor that they are is also so intricately woven into your grief journey and what's going on in your life. And I think so often, if you're a spiritual person, if you're on a healing journey, um, or if you're just on any kind of healing journey, right? And you feel like you're bumping into walls, or things aren't happening the way you want, or you're trying to manifest or doing all this kind of stuff. Why aren't things working out for you? Listen, like, if you have a loved one that has transitioned or will transition, like, your journey is about that. And whatever is happening for them on the ancestral realm is what your like, that's your biggest guidance, that's your biggest commitment, right? So no matter how much you're like, I want my life to go this way, your commitment to the loved ones that you hold closest to your heart, especially if they're in transition in the spirit realm, or moving into that portal, that commitment trumps everything else. And I'll give you an example, with my cats, Esta and Rahel. And so with animals, not only like, animals have a very special relationship to many different in many different traditions, right? On the spiritual journey, they are deep collaborators. Deep collaborators. And I wanted to mention this because in my last video, I showed you my co-producer, who was this dog, right, sitting next to me. And I wanted to just take a minute to say, I know that some people might be new if you're watching my videos, but some people have been watching my videos for a really long time. I started this YouTube channel in 2018, and at that point I was like, you know maybe at the beginning wave of, if you kind of go into a corner on YouTube, you'll see a lot of people who are like doing astrology reading videos, like, hey Gemini, hey Cancer, hey Taurus, and like tarot readings and for each sign. And I started doing that on this YouTube channel in 2018, and that was before it really blew up everywhere. And I was like, I saw one person doing it, and I was like, maybe I think I could do that. And I started doing it, and it really blew up really quickly. And I have taken most of those videos down, although if I've ever done a private reading for you, um, because I read people's birth charts privately as well, you have access to that. I'm not gonna take those down. They're unlisted, like they always have been. Um, yeah, as long as YouTube exists, it'll exist. But the public videos, I kind of took them down. But I'm saying that because if you were following me since then, you you know my cats, right? And because my cats, Esta and Rahel, the two black cats, they would like pop up in the videos, and I remember that was like one of my favorite things about the videos, especially when I started, especially the Taurus videos, because my cats were Taurus. And so every time I'd record a video for Taurus, I'd be like, hey, Taurus, what's going on? Rahel, especially, she would like jump in and she'd be like, I'm Taurus. I got some messages for you. And if you've been following my journey, you know that they passed away in 2022 and 2023. And, greatest companions of my life, greatest loves of my life, and I'm still deep in that grief. I'm still deep in that grief every day. It's still hard, and I miss them a lot. But, I showed you my little dog the other day, or in the last video, and I just wanted to address for people who are like, "Oh my god, Shanka, did you get a dog? You have a dog now?" Um, Listen, I'm his auntie. I'm his auntie. and I have been his auntie for 13 years. So he's not new. He's not new. He doesn't live with me permanently, but he stays with me sometimes, and mostly when we got work to do on our research project and our creative collaboration, he comes over. But also, we just spend time just to spend time. We don't work. Sometimes it's not about work. But I just wanted to clarify that he's not new, but he is, also one of the greatest loves of my life. It's just that when Esther and Rahel were alive, they they did not approve of having a dog in the house. They're like, We don't do that." But now that we're in spirit, now that we're in spirit, yeah. So that's I just wanted to say that. But yeah, back to what I was saying around a part of me has already taken the exit, and a part of me is still looping around and learning how to take that exit. Um, Rahel, my cat, transitioned first, and her experience of so when in according to my teachings, what I've learned from my teachers is that when a loved one transitions, they don't automatically become an ancestor in terms of, oh, now I'm, a guide, I'm evolved enough to show up and, be this guide basically in your life. Because, a soul has a process of learning who they are without a body. It takes a spirit some time to release their life, right? And it is very tied to our own grieving journey. And some spirits, they evolve into that like ancestralized place quicker than others in my lived experience and also according to my teachings. And it's not good or bad, right? It doesn't mean anything. Like you're not a more evolved soul if you take longer or quicker. It's just, kind of like puberty, right? It's like some people go through puberty quicker than others. Um, and Rahel is she's like a little speed monster on the road. So Rahel's she went really quickly. So Rahel found the exit really quickly um into this new world. But Esta, who died a year after, is taking longer, right? So he's going through a type of grief that just takes longer to process before he's quite learning how to take that exit for himself. And that doesn't make him, again, it doesn't make him like less smart or less brave or less of anything. It's his dedication. And it makes sense on a human level because, when Rahel died, I was still Esta's parent. But now that they're both gone, I have to learn how to keep living in a way that is not their parent anymore. So that's a huge life shift for me after 14 years of, them being the absolute like light of my room everywhere, like the center of my world, basically. Okay. And so that's part of what this looping around looks like. And I kind of want to say that just to remind us not to pathologize ourselves when we're like, oh, I should be able to do that. There's maybe a very dedicated, empowered decision that you're making. And that can be very, very much tied to what's going on in your spiritual body and your ancestral body, like it is for me. And so that's what I mean when I say there's a part of me that's already taken that exit, and there's a part of me that is still learning how to take that exit. And I wanted to say something about fear because this is something that came up many months ago. I actually saw this same driving metaphor many months ago in my like oracle visions. And I was like, "What's going on? Like, why do I keep missing the exit?" And there is something about fear that comes up. It's scary to take that exit, and in a lot of ways, it's more familiar. Familiar is another term that we use for our animal companions, right? It's more familiar, more comfortable to stay in this loopy loop. Um, and I want to talk about the advice. When you understand that, then the advice is like, well, get over your fear then. And maybe you say that in a nicer way, right? Like, this is about meeting fear. This is about having courage. This is about just like having the courage to take that exit. And I remember, when I saw that for the first time, my ancestors were guiding me. It's like, it's okay if you miss it, just like get it the next time, but like take a deep breath and take that exit. But I want to have a more nuanced conversation about this, given what we were talking about with this past self, future self kind of thing, where it's like your past self doesn't have the way out. So when we say this is about fear, you actually can't expect that past self of you to take that exit or end up judging them or even berating them for not having the courage, for being too afraid to take it. And I want to link this to, so many of us are having conversations about fear of being seen, the fear of being seen wound. Why are you afraid of, or even why are you afraid of taking that step into, what you want in life? Why are you afraid? And can you meet that fear and move past it? But you can't ask that version of you to not just meet the fear and move past it, because when you really look at the truth here, according to what's been coming up in these videos, that version of you is not just afraid. They actually don't have the skills or ability to get out. And they don't have the skills or ability to get out because they don't have the right support to even build those skills in the first place. And in fact, what they've done is build those skills, but they've built their skills in an environment where they've had to survive an environment that was antagonizing to them, that was not supportive. And that's why they're afraid, because they're like, why is life asking me to do something that I don't have the skills to do? I was not prepared for this. I don't have the right team around me. I don't have the right support. If I did it, I would die. It's kind of like asking a kid who's never learned how to swim before to jump in the deep end and just figure it out. Of course, that kid is scared, but is that really the issue? No, the issue is that you're asking that kid to do something that they were not supported or prepared to do. They don't have the skills. They know that they're going to die. They're being very smart, actually. Of course, they're fucking scared. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous. Of course, they're scared. That's not the issue, though. And so what we did in our last video, right, was give that past version of yourself what they need. And so they actually have to go through a process of healing, of transforming themselves. And they just have to have the space to do what they need to do, right? Like my past self just needed to go to that grief center and get buried in a bunch of, mud, volcanic mud from the earth and just be held and get a clearing. And that's it. But when you have your future self in that passenger seat, then your past self can get what they need, and you can make that exit. You can take that exit, and you can get to where you're going, where the fullness of your life will get the more support that you're trying to find. Um, and yeah, it does boil down to fear and courage, but the courage is actually in allowing that future part of you to sit in that passenger seat with you. It's allowing yourself to have a relationship to whatever's in that world, after you take that exit, even if it's completely mysterious, even if it's unfamiliar. That's the courage, right? The courage is embracing this version of you who has chosen to live, um, and who does have what they need to live, not just survive, but to live in this new economy, in this new ecosystem. And the courage is to choose it, even if it hasn't manifested yet, even if you can't see it all, even if you don't understand it all. And that is where the fear is. And that is where your courage is required. And that is where you do have the support to do something that's scary. And you do have the skills. And it is a risk. Like I said at the beginning, we don't get a guarantee for anything. But sometimes you have to take a risk to get what you want. And you have to take the risk to live for something and nurture it and protect it and choose it, even if you can't see it yet, even if it hasn't fully materialized. And the courage really is embracing this version of you that does have the space to grieve properly, that does have the space to rage properly, to release rage that you have to keep suppressed in other places. And it's not a destructive rage, it's a generative rage in this new environment. You have to have the courage to choose the part of you that does have what they need to grieve. And that takes courage, and that does elicit fear because you have to feel your grief, right? That's scary. I said this on one of my threads the other day because I remembered something a healer said to me many years ago. And she said, Shanga, when you really start living is when you're going to really start grieving. That's what this is about. When you really start living, that's when you'll really start grieving. And that's a beautiful thing. You know, that's part of what this open road means that we kind of saw the other day. But coming back to what I started this video about. So what happens after you do take that exit? It's important that you have that passenger, your future self in your passenger seat, because if you have a version of you, which is your past version of you, who had to survive your relationships in a certain way, you had to survive the work environment in a certain way, you had to survive your family circumstances in a certain way, you can't. So that version of you developed like highly developed mechanisms to survive, and those might have become, you felt like, oh, those are now part of my personality that needs to be dismantled now in a new environment. Like, it's not necessarily like they always feel like wounded parts of you, they feel like maybe empowered parts of you. And I think this is a very important conversation that we're having if we're going to talk about how we are all exiting into choosing economies that that are genuinely earth honoring versus exiting industries that are destroying our planet and that exist in us, right? And this is a very like BIPOC, immigrant thing, right? That like you you learn to survive, and be very some of us have been able to become very successful in industries that are, built by white supremacy. Um, Even, when I'm talking about this village artist grant system, it's like some people are very successful in navigating the grant world, right? But so yeah, that is still though a form of survival, though. You see what I'm saying? We're still surviving something that is white supremacist at its root. And when we go into the earth honoring economy, we we don't have to survive it, because it's not something that we have to survive, but it is something that requires us to live and collaborate with it. And so if you're coming back to, like, maybe let's say, an example in terms of intimacy and personal relationships, if you've been in a relationship for a long time that you had to survive, and that was dangerous and that was unsupportive, or where you couldn't be yourself, or you weren't fully honored, if you put that version of yourself in the passenger seat while you are trying to build relationships that you really, really want to be in, that will actually cause you some problems. And I've seen this, in my adventures of connecting with my future self. I have had many, many, many adventures connecting with my future partner and partners, like friends and other lovers and, creative collaborators. But I've had a lot of adventures with this one future partner, which I've written about a lot, even though the amount I've written about and not published is, like, way more than I've actually published, but I've still published quite a bit of things on my podcast and my apothecary, and you can, I'll put the link below so you can check it out. But I've learned this in my, excursions with my future partner, is that I've seen many moments in our future relationship where that's where a conflict comes up. That's where we get into conflict. That's when we have little, fights or tiffs or whatever. Is when I'm trying to survive something, or they're trying to survive something that is actually like the ghost of their past relationship in our relationship. And I'm like, who are you talking to? This isn't about me. And yeah, kind of what I wanted to say about that is that whatever you're doing to try and survive, whatever you had to do in your past to survive the relationship, you can't survive in this future relationship. You can't survive in it because it is not something that you have to survive. And so if you're trying to survive in it, that is actually what's going to cause you problems. And not, it's those moments that happens, right? In a healed and healing intimacy, where you're like, I'm going to come in fighting because something triggered me. The way that my future partner responds to me, and I to them in those moments, like, we don't judge each other. It's like, I see what you're doing. I love you, I understand you. I see that that's trauma, and then we work through it in a very generative way. But if I were to come in hot like that all the time in that relationship, at a certain point, my partner'd have to be like, I can't repair with you when you're trying to survive like that, because you're trying to survive someone who would never repair with you. And so I can't collaborate with you. I can't repair with you. I can't heal with you. I can't actually do anything with you. And so if either of us are showing up like that all the time, what we end up doing is letting the garden die. Woo! Right, Raven? I know Raven's watching and is like, that relationship is not invincible. An earth honoring economy is not invincible. Our ancestors are not invincible. You know, our ancestor guidance, it's not invincible. It's not like it'll just be here no matter what we do. It's incredibly devoted. It'll show up for us all the time. It has our back. But if we do not take care of the garden will die. And if you continue to show up in a relationship that needs your collaboration, that needs your repair, that needs your investment, that needs your healing, but you're constantly trying to survive something that will never do those things for you, your ability to take care of the garden is just not there. And so that's what I mean when I say it is still very important to keep to organize your altar, to organize the altar of all your different selves, to organize your five-man band, please. Make sure the tuba player is sitting in the right spot. The part of you that is a survivor, that still has to heal from that. Give them what they need. Um, don't have them navigating your new relationships, and it does get tricky because they seem real professional sometimes, right? Because that's we've had to survive by being super professional. So white supremacy sees us as so professional. But at the end of the day, that is a survival mechanism, and the garden needs something different from us. Let me look at my notes. Yeah, there's a quote. What conflict then looks like in a healed and healing relationship when you don't have to defend your honor because that relationship inherently honors you. That is a whole different ball game, right? Yeah. I'll leave it there for now. And I'll leave the links below. I hope you will join my friend Raven and I on December 6th. We're hosting a safe passage ceremony. And so we're going to be weaving this blessing and protection and energy healing of safe passage for all of us to get on that right road and to be who we need to be on that road so we can really take care of this garden that we are growing in our individual lives and that we're growing collectively on the planet. And in that time, during that safe passage ceremony, Raven and I were going to take you through a full presentation of this village artist grant system, which is like actually tangibly moving money toward people, projects, and purposes that serve this earth honoring economy that are just, the part of you, the part of me that's like, I'm fed up. Raven and I were talking about this the other day. Like, I have so many huge, huge projects that Spirit is feeding me all the time, and they won't survive without like proper funding. And I don't mean just like piddly honorariums. I'm sorry. But that's just like that's what, moving through this Canadian artist grant system for the last 20 years, that's all that it has offered me. Even in the most successful times that I've gotten grants, it still is set up in a way to dishonor the full ancestral healing journey that comes along with the work that I do. And we all deserve better than that. And we can take that into our own hands. And the system that I've developed is the how, right? It is how you organize a money moving workshop repeatedly to keep funding ourselves. So, anyone who's interested in learning about the how, the who, the what, the where, how does this whole system work? And I want you to come in and see it. I want you to leave with a very clear understanding of how the system works, and imagine, where you might see yourself in that um economy, so that we can genuinely keep each other funded, resourced, on all levels of what that means, not just monetarily, but also spiritually and collectively, and creatively, um, and also monetarily. So we're not leaving that part out. Yeah, so check out the links. That's happening on December 6th. And if you're listening in the future, then, whatever I'm doing in the future, I hope you check it out too. All right, I'll see you next time. Oh, yeah, definitely come back for November 20th, because we're doing something really special for Trans Day of Remembrance. So I'll see you there. Okay, peace. Bye.